It's 9 a.m. on Wednesday, July 10th. We'll go ahead and call the meeting of the Logansport Board of Public Works and Safety to order. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Roll call.
Mayor Franklin?
Here.
Chris Armstrong?
Here.
Ron Miller?
Present.
All members are present. Approval of minutes from the July 3rd, 2013 meeting.
I've read the minutes. I make a motion that we approve the minutes of the July 3rd, 2013 meeting as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It passes on a vote of 3-0. Approval of claims.
I've reviewed the claims, and I make a motion we approve the claims in the amount of $50,498.51 as presented.
I would second that motion. Is there any discussion? It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? It passes on a vote of 3-0. Approval of licenses. There are none for consideration today. Are there any visitor comments? Okay. Under old business, Steve Schwerin Properties, that would be Bill.
Good morning. We did receive from Mr. Schwerin a listing of properties that we had inspected, and he had put together a list of items that had yet to been done, and he had projected dates as to when those items would be done. I responded to the list with one. I wanted to know what the value of each one of the items that he was scheduling to be done in the future, what was the value for each one of those items, and explained items such as smoke detectors not in the residence is an unacceptable item to be extended beyond. I dealt with that with smoke detectors, with ground fault outlets in bathrooms, a hot water heater, relief pipe for the relief valve, items such as that. I then also put together a list of properties that we have on record that he's the manager for, which was not included in the list of items that he had submitted yesterday. I sent that back to him to re-edit that list, and I have not received it back. I also requested that on March 12th that we re-inspect all the properties that we've inspected to date and asked him to get that scheduled. I haven't heard back from that yet either. So he has presented a list as we had asked, and we are waiting for a response to the clarifications that we imposed upon that list.
Okay. So at least you're communicating and making some progress.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Under new business, there's a dumpster request from Jennifer Nessel Road, 1925 Spear Street. It's in your packet. Looks pretty plain and simple. This is the usual and customary method. New roof on the house. They need to haul away the old roof that's being torn off. So I would make the motion that we approve the dumpster request for 1925 Spear Street.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes on a vote of 3-0. Reports from the building commissioner.
These are photos of each one of the properties at 208, 210, 243. I had submitted my report for your review. If there's any questions in that report at all, I would certainly take those now. Okay, having none, then I'd like to go on to the property at 208 South 6th Street, which I had requested the board allow me till this week to discuss that in totality. I had provided to the board a copy of a chronological list of events that has occurred on 208 South 6th Street, which has a reciprocal effect on not only 208 South 6th, but also 210 South 6th Street, 214 South 6th Street, and to some extent even 212 South 6th Street property. There is no structure on 212 South 6th Street at this time. I would like to have a discussion about the options for that property. At this point in time, I don't have a definitive opinion as to direction that I would recommend the city go in reference to that piece of property. I included in a package to the board the definitions as listed under the International Building Code, which is recognized by the state of Indiana and consequently the city of Logansport. A definition of a dangerous structure is there. The existing structure definition, substantial structural damage definition, technically infeasible, and a primary function are all definitions within the IBC. Each one of the structures, 208, 210, 214 South Street, all fall within each one of those definitions. Under the dangerous section of a building, because of the structural conditions to some degree on each one of those buildings, it fits the definition of a dangerous structure. Under the definition of an existing structure, each one of the buildings, 208, 210, and 214 South 6th Street, fit that definition. The definition of substantial structural damage, 208, 210, 214, all fit that definition. Technically infeasible. If you take each one of these buildings as an individual, 208, 210, 214, take them as an individual structure, and to do rework on each one of those individual structures, it makes it technically infeasible not to have an effect on the adjoining and abutting properties. Primary function, each one of these buildings, the primary function of these buildings is affected by the structural condition of the buildings in its own right, based on its specific use and designated anticipated use. So each one of the definitions, which actually collectively fall underneath the unsafe building code of the International Building Code, each one of these buildings, 208, 210, and 214, can be classified as an unsafe structure within the code. The engineer's report that was issued on June 3rd, Monday, June 3rd, goes into a more precise and in-depth analysis of building by building, which reinforces the unsafe building code classification. So from that point, to be able to dissect and say we have an existing condition at 208 South 6th Street because of the partial collapse in April. Now the city is faced with a decision as to how do we secure that building, or how do we move to the next level to improve the building to protect life safety. And in my opinion, that's all the city's responsibility is to perform that action. But if we do something to 208 South 6th Street, it's going to have a consequential effect on 210 South 6th Street. And likewise, if we do some work on 210, it's going to have a consequential effect on 214 South 6th Street. I had a meeting on July 1st with the owners of 210 South 6th Street. Ms. Virginia Cook and her son were in attendance. They are also here this morning, by the way. Kevin Crook, and I believe it was his wife, were also at the meeting on July 1st. We had the city attorney at the meeting as well. My desire at the meeting was to develop a goal by the existing property owners, the property owners of 210 South 6th Street, 214 South 6th Street, that we could wrap a plan around what their future goals were for their building, so that if they had some input, the city had some input, we were going to make a consensus of improvements by any action we took as the city. During that meeting, we couldn't come up with any desire from either building owner. It was more of a position of wait and see, and we had a very open discussion, and there was no animosity or anything there. It was it's just the reality of what it is, based on economics, based on position in life of each owners are in their building. There just was no common positive direction pulled together that we could wrap our arms around to make a recommendation. So at this point in time, we have 3 buildings, which in my belief is, and it has to be proved out by the city attorney, but my belief today is that each one of the buildings can easily be classified as an unsafe structure underneath the International Building Code. But now we look at then what is the best methodology to deal with the situation we have at hand. We have a critical condition at 208 South 6th Street because we've had a partial collapse. We've temporarily shored it up and closed it at this point, but we need to go to the next level to get it secure, completely secure. We have 210 South 6th Street, which by the engineer's report that we have, which clearly depicts structural failures in that building as it is today, we have no commitment to get those failures corrected. And likewise with 214 in the engineer's report, there's clear defined structural failures on 214 as well. After the July 1 meeting, we have no clear direction on how that owner is going to resolve those issues as well. It becomes a dilemma for me to make a recommendation at the very least. If we look at the building's economic position today, from the information I have, and you know, I will not swear on a Bible it's correct, but I think it has some sound principle. The financial position of 208 South 6th Street today is that currently, according to the auditor's office, it has $54,000 worth of tax debt on it currently today.
Is that tax debt or tax debt and liens?
Tax debt only today.
Just tax debt.
We do not believe it has a mortgage on it, and that was a verbal information that was given to me back on April 27th by the owner that there is no mortgage. The city has just placed a $51,000 lien on that property for work that it's done to date with the collapse and the cleanup that we've done to date. So rough numbers, that's $105,000 of debt that exists on that piece of property or that structure today. 210 South 6th Street, which is owned by Virginia Cook, to my knowledge, there is no tax debt, there is no mortgage on it, and there are no liens on the property. And the lady has it on the market to be sold. I'm told it does have an insurance policy on the structure. 214 South 6th Street, which is owned by Mr. Crook, Kevin Crook, there is no tax debt on it. It's unknown if it has a mortgage, and there are no liens on the property, and we are told that it is fully insured. 212 South 6th Street, which by default, because of our downtown overlay requirements, that whole block being tied together, that has a tax debt, that piece of property tax debt we're showing of $18,000, and as a guesstimation, there's over $50,000 worth of liens on the property, and I'm not sure of the legal status of that, if that's still in a court case or if that case has been dismissed, so there may be some implications with that as well. All of that information is shared primarily on, if we're looking at a market value or marketability of the property or the buildings, it becomes a large impact on being able to market the building. If I specifically look at 208 South 6th Street, if I know I currently have a debt value of $105,000 on it, if the city goes in based on one of the engineer's scenarios of installs shear walls inside the building, repairs the roof, if we go in and do the structural supports in the basement, which are required, we're looking at another $60,000 to $72,000 of cost on top of that. Then it becomes, can the building be marketed and get the money back when you're talking $180,000 for that three-story building where it's located. Conversely, it's been on the market for 2 years at $67,000 and has not sold. And then also, if I look at then a scenario of the second scenario that was mentioned in the engineer's report, to remove 208 South 6th Street, to go within 210 South 6th Street, install the shear walls, and stabilize that building, which just the shear walls alone are between $32,000 and $39,000 of cost. That's an estimate to do the shear walls. The shear walls are required because the building is listing to the north, the same as 208 is. But as I physically look at 210 South 6th Street, in addition to make it marketable, I believe it has to have a new roof on it. I believe the foundation supports have to be done downstairs where the floor joists are just sitting on wood members and not on structural members to support it. All of those things need to be done. My estimate, we're looking at $55,000 to $65,000 of investment, including the shear walls, to get 210 South 6th Street so it's structurally sound without 208 being there any longer. Can that building be marketed for $60,000 to $65,000? I don't believe it can. I don't think the market supports it. And then if you look at 214 South 6th Street, if you remove 208 and remove 210, 214 is the best condition simply because it's a one-story structure. But it has structural failure in the foundation and in the exterior walls as well. That has to be dealt with as well prior to any work being done on 208 or 210, because you can't have the reciprocal effect of relieving stress. If you've got a loose box, it's going to get looser, so you've got to tighten it up, kind of a scenario. So at this point, I don't have a recommendation, I'm sorry to say. If I were to look at it on a market sense, and if I look at spending taxpayers' money on a market sense, we can't get the money back that we spend in any scenario that we do. So how can we justify spending taxpayers' money to improve a property that's going to bring the market value or the cost of the property higher than its market value? So it's not my call if I want to spend $1 of taxpayers' money and say I'm only going to get a nickel of it back in the best case scenario. I had hoped on the July 1 meeting that we would have had some definitive direction of hope of growth and desire by the other property owners, but we don't have that. So I know it's a lot of language and a lot of discussion without a recommendation, but I'm certainly open for questions.
I have a couple, if you don't mind. Would you repeat again, is Mr. Cook's building the only one that has insurance?
No, the assumption is Kevin Crook's and Virginia Cook's building both are insured.
Okay, thank you. Second question, are all three of those buildings currently condemned?
No, the only building that's condemned is 208 South 6th Street.
I'm not an insurance person, but under the circumstances, I would think the insurance companies have an obligation on both of those properties that are insured. I just don't know to what extent to stabilize them or to take them down. Do you have any idea of what that might be?
Well, I can't speak specifically for either insurance carrier that's representing Virginia Cook or Kevin Crook. I have had conversations with other insurance companies posing hypothetical questions. The singular response I get from everyone that I talk to is that the insurance company is a reactive group and not a proactive group. Now, the definition of that is that in order for them to do anything, they have to have a claim placed in front of them to do anything. If they don't have a claim, they can't react. To condemn a building simply because it is unsafe is not a claimable action to an insurance company. The building has to fail. There has to be physical loss of the structure before they view it as a claim. 208 South 6th Street, as an example, failed. That's an action. They will react to that. In my opinion, and it's only my opinion, and I don't want to speak for Virginia or Kevin's insurance carrier, if the city would propose to either property owner that they contact their insurance company because they have been listed as they have received notice it's an unsafe structure, I believe the insurance company is going to say, that doesn't mean anything to us. You own the building. You have to take care of it. That is not a claimable function. Now, if we started to work on either building and the building failed during the work, then that would be a claimable item. But I think we can all see the scenario with that is that their insurance company would go after the insurance company of the group that was doing the work, and it would progress in that manner.
Have we talked to our insurance carrier, our agent, to get them there for an opinion?
Yeah. Chris and I sat and talked to Regions Insurance, and in a nutshell, we received the same information, that they are a reactionary group. They are not proactive. There is no policy or there is no procedure within their scope that allows them to react unless there is a claim.
In the report, the engineer's report, I believe I read in there, and I don't remember which building it was or whether it pertained to all three, but there was a quote in there that the engineer's opinion was, in the event of a high wind, there was a good possibility that some or all of those walls could collapse. Did I read that correctly or not?
You did, and it really referred to the scenarios between 208 South 6th Street and 210 South 6th Street, because those are the two multi-story structures, and there's clear evidence of they're both listing to the north beyond structural acceptable limits.
And what is a shear wall?
A shear wall is a structural wall that is built perpendicular to the existing building walls that ties those walls together and provides lateral support. I mean, in the condition of 208 South 6th Street, it's a three-story structure with walls which run east and west as it physically sets. There is not a single north-south wall within the structure on all three floors. So, I mean, the way, layman's way, if I look at a house of cards that are built, you know, with no center walls, then what you end up having over age and time is that it kind of lists over. It's kind of taking, you know, one guy, an older fellow that I know referred to it as take a piece of spaghetti and stand it up, let it get moist. What's going to happen? It's going to lean, and that's what's going on. So those walls are actually built perpendicular to the building walls to tie those building walls in to prevent them from racking, leaning any further than they are. They are not designed to straighten the walls because it's a condition that can't be done. All you do is stop them from leaning any further.
Do we have a cost estimate on demolition?
I'm sorry?
A cost estimate on demolition of 208?
We have a cost estimate that between $24,000 and $28,000, depending on, you know, how it's done.
Right. I imagine it'd have to be a lot of slow, tedious handwork on that.
At this point, though, I mean, with the engineer's report, because he goes into his scenarios and he goes into the chronological event of how they have to occur. And in the scenario that if we were to opt to remove 208 South 6th Street down completely, we would have to go in and do the shear walls within 210 South 6th Street prior to starting demolition. Because if we don't, we're going to relieve whatever strength that 208 is providing to 210 will lean even worse. Because right now, they're kind of stacked against one another. They're gaining strength by leaning on each other. So if you remove 208 South 6th Street without doing something to 210, it's an extremely good reason that, possibility that 210 will collapse.
Mm-hmm.
Just thinking out loud, but how much money did the city invest in the old Greens Filter building before it collapsed?
I don't know, but it was a lot.
It was a lot.
Yeah. Between the city and Historic Landmarks Foundation, several different groups had an investment in that.
But it was hundreds, plural, of thousands.
Okay.
We don't have a lot of really good options.
Here again, this is not a recommendation, but you sit around and we work through these things for quite some time, and you come up with scenarios, or and hopefully something makes sense. But if it is acceptable to spend $1 in taxpayers' money and only return 25 cents of that dollar as the end result, one of the scenarios that could be looked at would be is to work with the owner at 210 South 6th Street. And I have not discussed this at all with the owner at all, so Virginia, you can throw something at me, I'm sorry. But if we work with the owner at 210 South 6th Street, if we say, okay, the city is going to invest tax dollars in 210 South 6th Street, and use $30,000 as a number to build the shear walls, then remove 208 South 6th Street. Currently, the owner of 210 South 6th Street has it on the market, and I don't believe has a desire to occupy. Sole desire is to market it, sell it, and move on to other things. is it then feasible to work a contract, and this is something that legal would have to review, but work a contract with that owner that if the city invests $30,000 to stabilize that building, 208 South 6th Street is gone, leave the building currently on the market. If the building sells, whatever value it sells for, up to the value that the city invested in it, that money is reimbursed first. And any residual value beyond that then is the owner's. And I'm not saying that that's agreeable to any party. That's just strictly a scenario. If I were to do something like that, I would also include the cost of redoing the roof on that building. I would also include the cost of redoing the supports down in the basement level, rather than having 4x4s on the floor and supporting the floor. Put in structural jack post system to make it permanent and lifelong repair, and not a temporary repair. So you could add another $10,000 probably to that. So you're around $40,000. I don't know the historical marketing value that the building's gone through so far, but if those improvements are made, does it bring it up to a marketable value in hopes of getting 25, 50 cents on the dollar back of taxpayer money, solve the poor structural conditions of the building, and then move forward? I mean, that is one scenario. Another scenario is to strictly go by the letter of the law, or letter of intent, I should say, in my mind, close up 208 South 6th Street in the condition that it's in right now, and pursue each one of the property owners underneath the unsafe building code law, and try to get them to do their own remediation and get the property marketable. Is that the sensible thing to do? We know 208 South 6th Street is not going to react. I mean, since December of 2012, that owner has shown he doesn't care what you say to him. It doesn't matter. We can't get any more out of him. He's just not going to deal with it. And is it fair then to 210 and 214 to impose that burden because they are better citizens, if that's a better choice of words, although the buildings are can be classified as unsafe? I mean, what is the right thing to do?
Is it a common wall between 208 and 210?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at 210 or 208, 210, and 214 as three boxes sitting side by side, 214 being a one-story box, 210 being 2, and 208 being 3. But they all share, 210 shares two common walls with 208 and 214. Consequently, though, 214 and 208 only share one common wall, but wall and foundation. So basically, from 8 feet below grade all the way to the roof line, they all are common walls and tied together.
This is not going to be an easy decision to make. Do we have to make one today?
No, I hope not. No, I don't see it, and I don't think we can. We need some time on this. We're getting these answers. Mike, representing your mother, would you have anything to add to this conversation? If you would come on up, state your name into the microphone, and Mom's welcome to come up too.
Michael Cook. The only thing I would say is a couple things stick out to me. Number one, in the engineer's report, it says all 3 buildings would benefit from the stabilization of 208 South 6th Street. That takes a lot of the problem away if you stabilize that building. But there again, is it worth doing that?
Money.
Mom's got with her insurance. They're waiting for a contractor to come back with some numbers, so we've got an idea of which way to go. I mean, that's it at this point. We're waiting on contractor numbers.
Have you contacted the contractor?
Mom has been in contact.
Okay,
with them.
which contractor are you working with? That one back there. Okay. All right. I don't think we can. I mean, we can't act on this today.
Right.
I don't think anybody expected to. Well, if after you hear back from your contractor and your insurance company, if you could remain in contact with Bill, and he can keep Chris advised of what's going on, and hopefully we'll come up with the best solution for everybody. It's certainly what we would like to do. We'd like to see your building remain standing. You know, we want to do what we can to make sure that that happens, but as Bill's pointed out, I could see this turning into a couple $100,000 escapade before it's over.
Right.
and still.
And I know years ago Mom had applied for a grant, but they fixed the building up because of its historical value or whatever. But she said that,
To begin with, they said they would match monies on fixing, and then when it came right down to it, they backed off to paying like 20% or something like that.
Oh.
So
Oh.
it wasn't.
Yeah, I think there's a whole list of qualifications that can go. I think they usually say up to 50%, but then it sometimes falls down to a lesser amount. Well, I wanted to at least hear if you folks had anything to add to the conversation, and it sounds like you're at least engaged. And
Right.
you know, if we hear from Mr. Hayden or your insurance company, please convey the message to Bill, and we will bring this back. I'd hate to set a date, to say a date certain that we would make a decision, but I think we need to let this percolate for a little while and get that information before we can take any kind of action on it. So please keep us in the loop as to what you find out through Gary and your insurance company.
all right,
Okay.
sounds good.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, please come.
Contact her insurance company.
Gary, if you would, I'm sorry, state your name for the microphone, just for the record.
Gary Hayden with B&G Construction. Her insurance company has paid on the fire part. They have closed her claim out as of yesterday. Whatever goes on now is up to the personal owner of the building, because that has nothing to do with the fire.
Right.
The damage that was done to the building was to the back, and they have resolved that issue. So they're not willing to go any further with the building unless more damage is done for the building to the north.
208.
Right.
I tried to set up an appointment. Her insurance man's out of Cincinnati, Ohio. He's not. In fact, I was on the phone when I was talking to Bill, but right as it stands right now, I'm still trying to get him to come up and try to decide something to do. But as it stands right now, Virginia's insurance company is not going to go anymore on the tearing it down.
Sure.
Unless something else is.
Unless they have to react.
Okay. And that's the best I can tell you on the insurance.
Yeah, and that's fine. If you could, when you get them the estimate on the shear walls, we can then possibly reach out to the insurance company ourselves, or perhaps our attorney could do the same. So.
And that's what I was going to ask. Maybe Randy could kind of, I can get you the name and number.
Okay.
Work with them if you would, please, and
Sure.
maybe help Virginia. She's complied with everything that
She has.
they've asked her
Yeah.
to do.
And we appreciate that. Appreciate
So,
you
I
being
mean,
here.
she's on it pretty fast, so
Yeah.
that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you very much. Bill, do you have anything else? No, that was enough. I would make the motion that we approve the building commissioner's report as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Is there any other discussion? I'm hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Passes on a vote of 3-0. Code enforcement officer.
I presented to you with a copy of my weekly report. Request your approval for it. I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have them.
I have no questions.
I make a motion to approve the code enforcement officer's report.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Passes on a vote of 3-0. Thank you. Superintendent of Public Works.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I respectfully submit my report for the Public Works Department for the city of Logansport. Hopefully you have a little time to go through, and if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. We continue to be very busy. Things come up. We've had a couple, probably the worst property cleanup that I've had in my 18 months. And it was deplorable, but we got it cleaned up and it looked better. We continue to do a lot of work. We're working on getting some of the entryways weed-free. So, very busy.
I know your guys are busy, and I know you guys catch so many of the undesirable jobs that are out there. I'm glad you're there to do them. I make a motion that we accept the report from the Department of Public Works Superintendent Dan.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, passes on vote of 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Clark.
Morning.
Good morning.
I have a few things. Number one, to bring you up to date, we have 2 probationary officers that will graduate from the police academy this Friday in Plainfield. Then starting Monday, we will have them back under the field training program, and once they complete that, they'll be on their own. So that's good news. Second, as I reported before, we have a conditional offer to another probationary officer. He's currently with PERF now. Once that's approved, then we'll bring it to the Board of Works for approval. Thirdly, we have a booth out at the fair again this year, doing different things, interacting with the public, question, answer, meet and greet, passing out different literature and stuff on different problems that the community faces. We're giving away bicycles to children, balloons. You know, it went over really well. We've got several compliments on it. We have officers and have some of my family members out there volunteering their time to do it, and it's been very good. Lastly, I've submitted my monthly report to you for your review and entertain any questions you have.
Any guess as to how your year-to-date mileage stacks up with prior year-to-date mileage?
I haven't examined those numbers to tell you definitely, but appears to be from month to month about average. I don't know if it's went up or down. I can find that and report to you next week if you'd like.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Okay.
I make the motion we approve the chief's report as presented.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, passes on a vote of 3-0.
Thank you.
I spoke with Chief Strong this morning. He did not have his numbers. They had not come in yet. His gas or his fuel usage. He'll have his report by next week. Are there any board member comments? Hearing none. Miscellaneous business, including ADA Sections 504 compliance and concerns, or any other matters not already considered? Hearing none, I entertain a motion to adjourn. We're adjourned.